Hey there! Thanks again for accepting my invitation. Before we start this episode, I just wanted to take a moment to say a few words and remind you, you, the listener, you who I'm so grateful can make it and be here with me today, you who I would love to know more about, know and understand and grow with. Before you watch this, remember that this is a space of love and light and a space where there's no judgment, where if you feel something perhaps triggered or if you feel some type of way, it's okay to step away from the video. These are heavy topics that we're going to discuss, and it's all right. There's no reason to feel ashamed. If you do feel triggered and you want to step away and come back, that's cool. That's okay. Come as you are. Listen with love and light. This is all for our benefit, for growth, so that I can learn from you, so that you can learn from me, so that we can create a community where we can grow together. I can't wait to get to know you guys and for you to hear me, and maybe we can learn together. All right, so here comes the next episode. Enjoy it. Hey, thank you for coming back and joining me. I'm so glad you could be here with me today. I have a question for you. What do you see when you look in the mirror? And I don't mean physical. I mean, like, think deeper. When you look in the mirror, what or who, perhaps, do you see? Have you ever found yourself avoiding the mirror, perhaps? I've done it. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I've totally done it. And you'd be happy to know that if you have, you're not alone. I'm sure others have too. And there's a really good explanation for that. And we're going to get into that. But perhaps what you're afraid to look at isn't so much yourself, but the self-awareness that looking into the mirror brings you. See, sometimes we can be afraid of our truths. And what I mean by that is we can be afraid of who we really are sometimes, as in what the world sees as opposed to what we believe or what we see. And in comes the psychology of avoidance. Let's talk about it. Why do people resist self-reflection, looking in the mirror? Well, one of the biggest things that happens to us, particularly in moments of trauma, is we are wounded. We're wounded, we're hurt, we feel something. A lot of times it happens in childhood. I'm sure we've all, in some way, have experienced some sort of childhood trauma. I have, and I'm going to tell you all about them throughout this journey. I really am, because it's wild stuff. But it's stuff that I'm sure we can all relate to in some way. But when you are wounded in childhood and there's no one really there to guide you, to help you understand what you're feeling, it tends to hurt quite a bit and we become very lost. And that pain is something that the brain is really good at suppressing. And those of you who are on that journey of awareness know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to pain and trauma. The brain is so freaking good at just taking everything and just hiding it. Takes it and puts it into the subconscious mind where you're not even aware it's there. And the only time you feel it, well, it's really unconscious, because whenever you have a similar moment repeat itself in your life, where someone maybe someone yelled at you when you were a kid or made fun of you and said you're ugly, and you've experienced what you experienced as a kid, whatever, you move past that memory, but somewhere down the line, maybe you're in high school, maybe you're in college, and someone suddenly judges how you look, you get triggered. You're like, I shouldn't be bothered by what they're saying. Well, why do I care? But it does bother you. And it's because on an unconscious level, that wound is sort of being reopened. And the emotions are rising to the surface. But you don't understand why, because the brain has taken that memory and has hit it so far in there, so deep into that brain of yours, that you don't even know it's there anymore. You think it's long forgotten. It's not. It's right there. But that's what happens, right? So the brain tends to protect us from discomfort. And it's not just things that have happened to you, it could be mistakes you made, it could be things you've done. Maybe an occasion where you were embarrassed or you did something that you're like, what the heck was I thinking? It's happened to me, man. I get it. And those count too as experiences that your brain doesn't want you to relive. So it's really good at hiding it. So, since we got to the topic of triggers, what happens then? Well, what do you think happens? Have you ever found yourself, and I know I've had this happen to me so many times, where you could be speaking simply with a friend and you're talking to them and you bring up, you're like, "Hey man, I noticed something." And they get livid, dude. They're just like flipping out. And they're like, "What did you say, bro? You're talking smack, whatever." They're losing their mind. You're like, "Whoa, bro. I'm your homie, dude. What's going on? Why are you flipping out on me?" They get so upset. And you don't know why. You're like, "Bro, what did I do?" Sometimes we tend to get defensive when we hear the truth about us from others. Maybe the reason that the advice that your friend or that I'm giving to someone upset them wasn't because it was wrong. Maybe it upset them because it was right. How do you move forward from that? And I think this is a great moment to address the importance of meeting people where they are. See, this space is going to be a very, very wonderful space of not only self awareness, but learning how to understand people in those moments. Like, okay, your friend's freaking out. Do you freak back? You freak out back at them? No, 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 no. It's a moment to recognize that they're experiencing a trigger, and what we have to do is kind of take a step back and meet them where they are. And this is a great opportunity to say, okay, I'm not doing anything to them, but they are feeling something as a result of what I'm saying. And whether you think it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's bothering them. And recognizing that is so important in allowing them space. And you can even ask them, you're like, "Hey, you got really upset, man. What what's happening? What are you feeling? Talk to me. Let me in, let me help you, or let me give you space to just talk about it. Analyze that a little bit." Because the whole point of this wonderful journey is to get to the root cause of everything. That's the whole point of this. So maybe we can address why that's happening. "Hey man, I noticed you got really upset. Let's talk about that, dude. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful thing. In fact, there's healing in that, because in offering them that and letting them kind of come to you at their own pace, if they're willing, because you're not going to force them to do it either. You just say, "Hey, if you want to talk about that, we can." And if they don't want to, that's okay. But if they do, you're giving them that space to feel, to express what they did not have when they were young, or when that happened. Whatever trigger, whatever experience that causes those triggers, they didn't have that time or that space or that guidance, but you're now giving it to them. And there's healing in that. And it's a beautiful thing. It's beautiful. And for the person that's experiencing that trigger, if that was you, that's okay. Hey man, dude, that's amazing. I always used to beat myself up whenever I would have an outburst or something. And obviously, it takes a really deep amount of self awareness to recognize that I flipped out, and that's not okay. But it's a beautiful thing when it happens, because if you are aware, yeah, then you know where to start looking, right? And it's not to say that we're not going to have multiple triggers. Of course, we're going to have multiple triggers. We experienced tons of things as children, and some of us were not fortunate enough to have the emotional regulation that we needed to take a deep breath to know how to go through that. But that's okay. It's all okay because that's why we're here now. Okay. Um, so we take a moment, we look back, and we say, okay, this guy, my homie said something and it upset me, and now I know that that's a trigger. Why? Where does that stem from? Oh, that is the question. Where does it stem from? And you're going to ask yourself this question many times, and it's the best question ever because it opens up the doorway to healing, recognizing. Oh my God, it's freaking great. I'm so happy. Awareness leads to change. Those triggers lead to change, assuming you're willing and ready. Because I don't know about you guys, but I know some people who it's a hard journey because once you put the glasses on of awareness and you become aware, you start recognizing in other people things that perhaps you may recognize within yourself or recognize in your old self, and you want to help them. Not everybody's ready. Not everybody's ready to take that step. But if, they're ready and they're willing, then hey man, there could be healing in it for both of you. Because opening that door to the question of, hey, I noticed something, this is how you reacted. Apologizing, I'm sorry if something I said may have caused you to feel something. It's not, you're not apologizing for the way they felt. You're, just offering empathy, right? And sympathizing. Like, you felt some type of way. I don't know what I said, but hey, man, I'm sorry. You're my friend. I love you. You're a stranger. Whatever. I don't want you to feel that way, man. I want you to be all right. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here. So there's healing in that for both parties because maybe they have some insight that you need, or maybe you can give them what they need. Anyway, awareness leads to change. And, one of my favorite sayings of all time, and I will never forget this saying. It's one of the coolest things. Is the first step to solving a problem is understanding that there is one. I can't remember where I heard that. I don't know who said it. It's not my original saying, but it's a great quote, and it's it's perfect. You want to solve a problem, you got to recognize that there's one right there, right in front of you, man. You want to get better, maybe you got to look at that mirror for a little longer than a second, and maybe don't avoid it and say, hey, you know what? There is something here. It's not easy to look in the mirror, to sit with yourself. It's not easy, man. It's hard. And there's probably going to come a time, or maybe there was a time when you did it and you were off to a good start, and then suddenly you just kind of, I'll revisit this another time, and another time, and another time. The journey's a long one because it gets hard. It's not easy to take off the mask we wear daily and recognize that there's something to work on. And I'll be honest with you, this has been, for me, it's been a journey of over 5 years. And there's still some things sometimes that I'm like, okay, I need to revisit that. I would advise you to find grace in every moment that you visit that hardship you're trying to get through, because there's no time frame on this stuff. It's today I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to look at that question, and I'm going to ask myself this, and I'm going to see how far I get. Whatever time you give it is enough. And being aware that there's something wrong and actively working on it doesn't mean it's okay to keep doing it. But at least you've opened the door to recognizing it so you can try and be better while you're healing those wounds. And that's the real work, is catching yourself and knowing when a trigger pops up and taking deep breaths, and having that emotional regulation. It can be a bit of a process, but in time, it'll get easier. It will, I promise. As long as you take that step and you don't look back, it will get better. So I ask you again, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And if you don't like the answer, what will you do about it? Think about that for a bit. And I'll see you in the next one. Hey there, thanks for watching the video. I really hope that you were able to find some insight, or maybe you have a question now because of what we talked about. And if you do, please go down below and leave a question. I'd love to answer it. I'd love to have a discussion with you guys. Maybe we all have questions and we can all talk about it and answer each other's questions, because that's what I want more than anything, is to learn, to grow, to hear your questions and know more about you. And we can figure it out together, because we're all fucking trying to figure this shit out. Excuse my French. We're all trying to figure it out. Leave a question down below if you want to. If you're not ready to, that's okay. But I did want to leave you with 4 questions that maybe you can ask yourself along the way after this video. Why is it so hard to see ourselves clearly? Why do we get defensive when others reveal truths about us? What happens when we finally face our own reflection? And how much of our identity is built on avoidance rather than truth? Sit with these, ask yourself them. Let me know your answers down below. I'd love to keep this conversation going. Please. I'll see you guys soon.